thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Becky Siekmeier, and I am the Program Director for the SciTechsperience Internship Program.
And my name is Kipp Graham, and I'm the Employer Network Manager at the Software Guild.
This webinar is part of the SciTechsperience STEM Job Search webinar series. So Kipp and I are joining forces on a few different topics in this series because although we work at different organizations, our clients have many of the same questions about the job search process. So we've put our heads together to bring you information on a variety of topics. We want to hear from you, so please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them into the questions box, and we will respond throughout the webinar. So before we get started today with our webinar, we want to take just a minute to give you a little background on each of our organizations. As I mentioned, this webinar is part of the SciTechsperience webinar series. As you may or may not be familiar with SciTechsperience, I'll fill you in kind of really briefly on the basics of the program. Essentially, SciTechsperience is a program that connects college STEM majors to paid internships in small for-profit businesses. We work with hundreds of companies in science, IT, engineering, and manufacturing sectors, and a few others. This is a free statewide program that's funded by the state legislature, and we've been around since about 2012. And actually, we've placed more than 1,000 students in internships across the state. So this year and next year, we will place at least 650 students in small Minnesota companies through the program. And what's really unique about SciTechsperience is that employers are provided with a reimbursement for half of their students' wages, so 50%. That reimbursement is worth up to $2,500, and it serves as a really big incentive for companies to come and hire interns through the program when they may not otherwise have been able to afford it, and sometimes they'll hire more than one. So it's a great place to be if you're looking for an internship. It's like a one-stop shop for college students pursuing either associate's, bachelor's, or master's degrees in STEM fields. And the program really helps students discover hundreds of different opportunities all across the state that they may not find anywhere else. So if you are not registered with SciTechsperience, check out our website, scitechmn.org, for more information. And the enrollment form for students is accessed directly from the homepage. So Kipp, why don't you tell us about the Software Guild?
Sure thing, and thank you so much for having me today. So the Software Guild is a bit different. We are a career-focused, full-time trained boot camp designed to help people become professional software developers. So we're really an employment-based program. We teach individuals to be full-stack developers in one of two languages, either Java or C#.net. And after they complete our course, we help coach them on how to find a job within software development, and that's actually my role at the company. Our program is very intensive. It's 12 weeks long and consists of in-class instruction from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday every day, with 20 to 30 hours of homework every week on top of that.
Wow.
So it certainly is a boot camp. We take that word seriously. And it's definitely a lot of work, but upon graduation, our students have an extremely high chance of finding employment within the field. Right now, we're at 90% placement ratio. And if anyone's interested in learning more, please follow the link here on the slide to the softwareguild.com and talk to an enrollment counselor there, or reach out and ask me any questions.
All right, that's great. Thanks, Kipp. Let's dive into today's topic, which is networking. So how often have you found yourself saying, yay, it's time to build my professional network? Well, if you're like most people, probably never. So for most of us, networking feels like a big, hairy beast that you'd rather avoid.
That's for sure, but it definitely doesn't need to be that way. There are many myths about networking, but today we're going to dispel two of those myths. The first myth is that networking is all about going to big events and meeting up with strangers. That's certainly part of networking, but that is not the biggest part of it, and we're going to address that. The second myth is that networking is something you only need to worry about when you're looking for a job. Networking is a continual thing that you're going to do for the rest of your career. And while networking is only as mysterious until you learn more about it. Like anything, the more you know, the more empowered you'll feel.
That is so true. Have you ever stopped to consider how many people you know and how many people they know? Think of networking like a drop of rain landing in a pond. When the drop splashes into the water, it creates ripples that move outward from the center, right? So think about yourself as that first drop of water and the ripples as your potential network. When you begin with your inner circle and move outward, then you have a strategy for building your network that feels doable and far less daunting.
That's absolutely right. And the most important step in this process is getting started. The first ring in the ripple of water is reaching out to people that you already know. So that should be really easy. Reach out to your family, your friends, friends of your families, your friends' families, and even people that you talk to all the time, like neighbors, classmates, and coworkers.
Right. And so don't forget about other people in your network, like professors, advisors, teammates, lab partners, group projects, student groups that you're involved in. If you're volunteering anywhere, reach out to that network, religious leaders, and so on. Make a list of people you can talk to and pick a place to get started. You may want to start with friends and get a feel for how you're going to have these conversations and work up and out from there.
Absolutely. And here's kind of how to make the first move. When you're starting to reach out, do it via a call, a text, or an email, but mainly use the method that depends on how well you know the person. So if it feels more comfortable to text an individual that's a good friend, do that. If you don't know them quite as well, shoot them an email. And then invite the person to meet up for coffee, a lunch, a drink, again, whatever's the most appropriate for your relationship, and just try to get some time to meet up together.
Yeah, okay, so now you know who to reach out to and how to get started. Let's talk about what happens when you actually get to the meeting. So first of all, explain, again, why you're asking for the meeting. For example, you could say something like, hey, Kipp, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me. As you probably know, I'm working toward getting my degree in software development, and I'm really interested in finding an internship in my field. Second, you want to let them know what kind of work you're looking for. The more specific you are in what you hope to find, the better. Like the worst thing that you can say to someone is, I'll take anything. Yeah, it's much better to say something like, I'd love to find a position in software development working on mobile apps, or I'm hoping to find an internship with a mechanical engineering firm that specializes in robotics. You see the difference? The more specific you are, the easier it will be for that person to think about how they can help you, and it will be easier for them to remember you after the meeting.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Next, ask them to help you expand your network by introducing you to people that they know. Ask for names, companies, phone and email info, whatever information they can give you to expand that ripple one more length. Ideally, your contact should make the introduction to their contacts and copy you in the message so you're all included on that message. Finally, look for ways to give back and be generous with your time when you're having these initial conversations. How can you help this person with something that's important to them? And that can sometimes be difficult. When you feel like you're looking for a job, you might feel like you don't have enough to offer, but that's definitely not true. Bring up an article you've read, something they're interested in, or just express gratitude. That goes such a long way. Just saying thank you and making sure to follow up and say thank you as well. And also make sure to follow up with any leads they give you on positions or contacts.
Yeah, I just want to remind people to let us know if you have any questions. You can go ahead and type them right into the questions box, and we will we'll answer those questions as we go throughout the webinar. All right, let's talk about informational interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you've got introductions to the next ring of your network, it's all going to be about informational interviews. These are exactly what they sound like. A meeting with someone to get more information about the field or a position. It's not a formal interview where you're asking about a specific job, but you should do your homework anyway. As we mentioned earlier, know about, or I guess we haven't mentioned it yet, sorry, but know about the position in the company and the industry that they work at. It also should be noted that do not call it an informational interview when you're asking to meet up with these people.
Why is that?
Well, you just want to use everyday language. Like, I want to get coffee, can I have a phone call to pick your brain on the position? It just sounds a lot more comfortable. It's a lot less jargony, and everybody's just going to feel a little bit more comfortable meeting up with you for coffee rather than an an interview.
Right. Okay. So, if you haven't already done this, ask for an introduction to the person that you want to meet from someone you already know. And when that introduction happens, be the first person to respond. Like if it's via email, be the first person to respond to the email and say, "Hey, Kipp, thanks so much for the introduction to Piper. Hey, Piper, I look forward to meeting you." Set up the meeting. Propose multiple times that you're available over a couple weeks. Don't just say, "Hey, can you meet on Tuesday at 9?" People are busy. Give them a couple different options.
Absolutely.
And then prepare. Google that new contact and look them up on LinkedIn. Research the company that they work for and the position if you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. An important part of the preparation is also making a list of questions to ask them when you finally do get the meeting. Some of our favorite questions include, please tell me about your professional journey, or how did you get to where you are now? What steps did you take along the way? How did you advance? Check their LinkedIn profile. That way you know about their career and you can ask them about specific steps within it. You can also ask them what they like and dislike about the field and their current company or current job, as well as ask them, what they would do if they were in your shoes right now.
Oh, good point.
The most important thing that you should ask them, though, is who else should I meet? You want to work on getting to the next networking ring. Say, I'm interested in learning more about my field. Who else do you recommend that I talk to? Would you be willing to do an introduction for me? Getting that introduction to the next ring is so important because it's very unlikely that the person you're talking to is going to have the perfect job for you. But the more rings in your network there are, the better those chances become.
Right, and the bigger your network gets along the way.
Yep.
All right, so remember that every interaction that you're going to have with somebody is providing a chance for you to shine. So it's really important to put yourself in a good light. Bring copies of your resume, business cards, those, the questions that we just talked about, having a list of those prepared, because, you might get there and your mind can go kind of blank if you get a little bit nervous. So make sure you bring that along.
Yep.
And then be sure to have something to take notes. Good old-fashioned pen and paper goes a long way to try to remember names and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And then be sure to dress appropriately for the meeting. Business casual for sure. Suits and really nice dresses might be a little over the top. It depends on who, where, and when you're meeting. So try to get an idea of the company's style by asking the person who referred you to this new contact, or by doing a little Google research. Company's website should provide some clues to their company culture.
Absolutely. There are some other important things to keep in mind, such as the following. Make sure you show up early. This is going to be your treat, so you're buying coffee, lunch, drinks, whatever you're out for. Make sure you arrive before they do, so you don't show up and they already have that coffee in hand. When you arrive, make sure to use a firm but not gripping handshake.
Bone crushing.
Yeah, I always hate it when somebody's handshake is a little bit too soft and they're not squeezing. And also, I really dislike it when somebody just comes up and crushes my hand to establish dominance. So just a nice firm handshake. And make sure to make eye contact at the initial greeting when you shake their hand, as well as throughout the rest of the meeting.
One thing too, you should have already done this, but make sure you look the person up on LinkedIn. They probably already have a profile, because you want to know what they look like. You got to be able to find the person when you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how many coffee meetings I've had where I go in and I go up to somebody, "Are you Steve?" And then they're not. And just save yourself that trouble. Go on LinkedIn, look at the picture. And then you're there to learn, and that's really important to keep in mind, is that you're not there to get an interview or a job offer from this specific person. It's okay to ask them if they have any openings for which you might be a good fit, but you're there to learn and expand your network, and that's going to help you network more, just going in with that attitude. And also, while I'm at it, be respectful of the person's time. Stick to the length of the time scheduled for the meeting. And so if you feel like the conversation is going well and you might go over that time, at least address that that's happening and be respectful of the fact that they may need to leave. Then, again, as we mentioned earlier, make sure you ask who else they recommend you meet, and ask them for introductions if they can do that, because expanding your network and getting that next ripple is all, that's what the name of the game is all about. And finally, say thank you. Say it in the meeting and send it in an email after the meeting. Gratitude goes such a long way.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, these people are taking time out of their busy schedule, and you definitely want to show that you're thankful and grateful for what they're doing for you.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, if you have any questions, make sure that you go ahead and plop those into the questions box in your menu there on the right-hand side of your screen. All right. Let's move on to the next ring in the networking ripple, and that is actually using LinkedIn. If you're not familiar with LinkedIn, and we've mentioned it quite a few times today, but LinkedIn is a business and employment-oriented social networking service that operates on websites and on mobile apps. And most professionals do have a profile on the site, and it's a great way to have a professional online presence for free.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't been to the site yet, you'll find it at www.linkedin.com.
In order to use LinkedIn, you'll need to create a profile if you don't already have one, and you absolutely should have a LinkedIn profile. And if you already do have one, go back, check it again, make sure it's good and up to date and matches your resume.
Yeah, good point. Your profile should match your resume in terms of skills and experience. And you're going to want to create a title for yourself, such as software developer seeking new opportunity or something along those lines. If you include a photo, and most people do, be sure to use an image where you're smiling and looking professional. Like the last thing you want to do on your LinkedIn profile is have like your arm around your buddy from a wedding after you've had a few drinks, or you're hanging out with your dog in your backyard. I mean, you want to look professional.
Yeah, absolutely. This is your professional face.
Yes, exactly. And then you want to create a good summary. I found a really great article with examples of LinkedIn profile summaries, followed by 8 tips for crafting one for yourself. You could probably we could do an entire webinar on this topic, and I don't want to get sidetracked today, but it's definitely worth a read. And if you expand your questions box, I think we put it in there earlier in the chat box. If you look in the chat box, there's a link to that article. And it looks like we have a question asking if this webinar will be available later for reference. And the answer is yes. Since you registered for the webinar in advance, you are going to get an email that has a link to the recording, and it will also be on the SciTechMN.org website in a week or so. We'll have it up on our blog, so you can get to it there. All right.
One tip on the summaries is that someone looks at your profile, they're only going to look at the first 2 or 3 lines in the summary section, and will actually need to click to read more in order to read the rest of it. So I would definitely recommend making sure that those first 3 lines are very catchy.
Yeah, right. Good point.
Absolutely. So you can and should also join industry groups and actually participate in online discussions. There are tons of those to choose from in each and every industry, so that shouldn't be hard to find a few in your market. And once your profile is ready, connect to everyone you know, including recruiters. Recruiters are dying to find more good professionals. So even if you don't know the recruiter that well, or just want to connect with them, shoot them a connection request. Another fun tip is you can actually customize the URL for your specific profile.
Oh, cool.
The way to do this is to log into your profile, click on your profile picture on the top right, and it will take you into the face of your profile. To the right of your photo is a box that's going to say edit public profile and URL. Click that box and that'll open up a new window. And then again on the upper right, click edit URL and you can make it whatever you want. And it's as simple as that.
Cool. So, that's something really you could include on business cards and email signatures.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it easy for people to see that LinkedIn profile after you put enough work in to make it look great.
That's cool. That's a really fun tip. Okay, so let's talk about how to connect to people that you don't know on LinkedIn. So first, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with understanding the LinkedIn terminology. So if you're connected with a person directly, then you have a first-degree connection with that person. If someone you know is connected to the person that you want to know, then you have a second-degree connection, and so on.
Right. And if you see a position or a company that you're really interested in, here are some guidelines on how you can get connected to a person at that company. If you have a first degree connection at that company, reach out directly to that person and say something like, I'd love to grab coffee sometime and ask you more about your company or this role that I saw. If you have a second degree connection, LinkedIn will actually show you how you're connected to that person, what mutual connection you have. And so you can ask that mutual connection to make an introduction for you, like we talked about earlier, from your first to second ring of ripples. If you don't have a connection, try sending a connection request to that person, but make sure to write a short message about why you're trying to connect and ask if you could meet for coffee or something like that.
Yeah, it's so important to include though, like why you're contacting. Otherwise, you could just be anyone in the world kind of connecting to that person, and they may not accept your request.
Absolutely. I get actually LinkedIn connection requests almost every single day. And if I don't know you and you don't include a note, there's no way I'm accepting your request. But if you include a nice note that says, I don't know you, but I'm just trying to network and learn more about the industry, I might connect with you and just say, yeah, absolutely, I respect that. But put in 5 seconds and write a quick note. It just goes such a long way.
Yeah, right. That is such an important point. All right. We have a few other ideas for using LinkedIn to connect with people. And the first one is to search for people who went to your school, people who have the same major as you. Send them a connection request and add a little note like we were just talking about, and let them know that you graduated from the same school in the same major, and that you'd like to, again, grab a cup of coffee to, talk about the industry or,
Yep.
kind of their career path or that sort of thing. And then, absolutely approach others that you have talked to via LinkedIn in the groups that you've joined. That's another good way to build your network.
Definitely. In both cases, be sure to follow the good meeting prep and protocol that we mentioned earlier. Be sure to send a thank you after the meeting by either email or LinkedIn, though email is preferred if you do have their email address. It should also be noted, Becky, that not everyone will respond to you when you're trying to set up a meeting or you're trying to network, and that is perfectly okay. Nobody bats 1,000, and you should never take it personally when somebody either doesn't respond or doesn't want to meet. Just keep trying and focus on the successes that you are having.
That is a really important point, because I think people think they have to have success kind of all the time, and that's really not realistic.
Oh no, not at all. Even I today, when I'm trying to set up meetings, even I don't bat 1,000 now when I'm setting up these meetings, and you just kind of learn to not take it personally when people don't respond.
Yeah, good point.
Also, anytime you meet with new people, connect with them on LinkedIn. Be sure to personalize the connection request like we talked about earlier, but also include how you know them. It was great to meet you today. It was great to meet you at that event over the weekend. Just make sure that you can kind of pop back in their memory how exactly they do know you.
Yeah, that's really important. We kind of mentioned this earlier, but building your network is something that you should be working on throughout your career. It's not just when you're looking for a job. It needs to be something that you've been developing along the way, so it's ready when you need it. Think of it as a great investment in yourself.
Absolutely.
All right, so again, if anybody has any questions about what we've covered so far, go ahead and type that into the questions box, and we'll be happy to take that question as we're going. All right, so let's move to the outer rings where the cold networking happens. This is where networking is usually the most stressful for people because you're meeting face to face with strangers and people that you haven't met before. So cold networking is going to include big events like career fairs or industry events, or like we talked about, connecting to that outer ring in LinkedIn, or in smaller events like meetup or group meetings.
Yeah, this part is definitely the big hairy monster that you mentioned earlier. This is the thing that scares people the most, but there are definitely strategies to make this experience a lot less scary.
Yeah, so here's a couple tips that we'd like to share that really can help you reduce your stress. First of all, create an elevator pitch. And we're talking about a short elevator pitch
Very
that's
short.
like 5 to 20 seconds, maybe 1 to 2 sentences. It's not going to be, in the old days, they used to say, oh, 90-second elevator pitch. People will totally gloss over if you go into some kind of big spiel. So just include a couple of things like your name, where you work, or maybe what you're hoping to do next. It should feel and sound natural. So something like, hi, I'm Becky. I'm looking to transition into a career or, a full-time role in software development.
Yeah, that's perfect. You definitely want to keep it short and sweet like that, so people keep their attention the whole time. We also talked about this in all of our webinars that we do, but always do your homework. Research the speakers that are going to be at an event so you can speak knowledgeably on who they are. Be prepared to make connections. Bring business cards, resumes, and other ways of sharing contact information. Know how to dress appropriately, and that really depends on where you're going. If this is an annual or a monthly event, look at previous pictures from previous events so you don't show up in a full suit when everyone's in jeans, or like I've done, show up in jeans when everybody else is in a full suit. So learn from me, don't make those same mistakes. Also, for bigger events, maybe bring a sidekick or a friend with you. Make sure you don't spend the entire time talking to them, but instead use each other as resources on how to introduce people when maybe you've broken into a circle of people having a conversation. Bring that person with you, send them introductions as you're at those events.
That's a good point. One thing that I always find really awkward at these kinds of events is, you see a group of people that are already in a conversation and you want to, kind of join that group and walk up and start talking to people. What do you advise on how to do that gracefully?
Yeah, that is certainly a tricky one, and one that I think I and most people still struggle with. But there are a few key things that you can do to ease the transition. When you walk up, try to find a space and kind of ease your way into the circle. And first of all, do not interrupt the conversation. Simply wait for a pause to introduce yourself, or even better, if you can add something to the conversation, wait for your moment and chime into the topic that they're talking about, and then follow it up with oh, I'm Kipp, by the way. That's just a smooth way to kind of get into the conversation there. The biggest mistake I usually see from people who are new to networking events here is that they wait way too long to say something, and then it kind of becomes awkward and you never get the chance to introduce yourself. Be bold, and when there's a lulling conversation arises, don't hesitate. Step up and introduce yourself. Your first time out is definitely going to be very intimidating. I'm still intimidated by this a little bit. I don't know if you are.
Yeah, definitely.
But, joining a group already in conversation is always going to be a little bit awkward. But trust me, the more you do it, the better you will be, and the less awkward you'll feel, or at least the more confident you'll be, and the less it'll bother you that it is a bit awkward.
Right. You'll be maybe a little less awkward. But that's really great advice.
Also, keep track of who you meet, either on your phone, write it on the back of the business card, or make a note of who you're meeting with. I cannot remember the names of everyone I meet at these events, and I doubt you guys can either. So take a little note of who they are and maybe where they worked, find them on LinkedIn afterwards, and send them a connection request like we talked about earlier.
That's a really, really great idea. All right, so, kind of to summarize, like anything, networking is something that you're going to get better with as you practice it. The most important thing is to make that plan, kind of figure out what your ripple is, right? Figure out where, that inner network and building out to those outer rings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't stress this enough, but be prepared. Do your homework. Know what you're getting into before you walk in the door. And also follow up with people. When you're getting those introductions, make sure that you reach out before the other person reaches out, so you're following up there. And also follow up with the people that did help you out, and say thank you while you're there, but also follow up and send a thank you afterwards. And also, finally, connect on LinkedIn and connect in person with every person you meet that might bring value. I really cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And again, said this already a couple times, I want to say it again, continue to build your network throughout your career. It's an ongoing process, and you really want to have it ready when you need it, because you never know when your employment situation is going to change.
Absolutely.
So, all right, does anyone have any final questions? we'll hang out here for just a couple seconds. I know there's quite a few people online, so now's your chance to ask a question. Okay, here comes one. Is it true that most companies are not willing to take senior students as an intern? I would say that's definitely not true with SciTechsperience. There are a lot of companies that are hoping to take their intern and convert them into a full-time hire if the internship goes well. And so they're often looking for people who are seniors because they want someone that maybe could go full-time after school gets out. Or they've got a few more classes under their belt. So absolutely not. I don't think that should be a concern at all.
Absolutely. I actually was just at 2 Fortune 500 companies that were interested in hiring on our students as interns, and our students aren't even in school or going back to school, and they do want to convert full time after the internship. And so I think that shouldn't be a concern at all.
All right. Okay. So if there are any other questions, why don't you go ahead and put in any final questions that you have. We're going to go on to our last screen. We'll hang out here for just a few more seconds, but really that's kind of all that we have for today. We want to thank you all very much for joining us, and we hope that you found this information to be helpful. Again, you're going to get a recording of this webinar, a link to it in an email, so kind of take a look out for that. We wish you really great success in building your network and hope that you all have a great day.
Yeah, thank you all, and best of luck in your networking.